This is our first proper off-road test of the Royal Enfield Bear 650. Yep, that's right, the retro-style twin that looks more at home on a back road cafe run than blasting through the bush. So why in the hell are we reviewing it?
Motorcycle Adventure Dirtbike TV is proudly supported by Liat, Giant Loop, Bikes Only Transport, Muck Off, Rally Raid Products, Motul, Pirelli and Aturbis.
And remember, keep your filters clean and your throttle on.
So when a largely road-biased bike like the Bear 650 shows up with a nostalgic nod to the golden age of desert racing, you've got to ask, what's the story here for MADTV? Simple, they call it a Scrambler, and a Scrambler means dirt to me. I want to know how much off-road this thing can really handle, and whether it's got anything to offer riders chasing more dirt-focused adventures. Could this be a gateway drug for those wanting to taste adventure without going full send into high-spec adventure territory? Or is the Bear just a street bike in adventure drag built for Sunday cafe runs? So stick around, because today we're going to find out if the Bear 650 can cut it in the dirt, or if it's better left on the blacktop. The eastern seaboard of Australia has been copping an absolute flogging. Torrential rain, relentless mud and conditions that are far from ideal for any sort of motorcycle testing. But nevertheless, I've pushed on. So what exactly is the Bear? Well, at a glance, it's a misty-eyed nod to the early days of American desert racing, when road bikes were stripped back, beefed up and raced in the desert. Royal Enfield has channeled that spirit and they've nailed the look. Sure, it shares a truckload of DNA with the Interceptor 650, but don't be fooled, this isn't just a cosmetic makeover. There are real dirt-minded upgrades here. Shower forks with longer travel, more ground clearance, reworked steering geometry, raised seat height, twin rear shocks and a barky 2-in-1 exhaust that actually adds a bit more punch, 8 horsepower in fact. It rolls on road-biased dual sport tyres, hinting at the Bear's intended playground, unpaved back roads, not gnarly enduro trails.
Up they go. We won't be going up that. What do you reckon? If only I had a knobby tyre. I think I'm kidding myself.
Time to get stuck in to see how much dirt orientation this bike really has. It's a 1.5 hour ride out of the city before I hit the dirt. A useful time to acquaint myself with the engine and drivetrain.
It's a quiet, reassuring power. I mean, I'm sitting on around 3,000 revs at the moment in 4th gear, and I just turn it on and it accelerates quite briskly. Certainly enough to get you out of trouble, and not enough to get you into trouble, I don't think. Oh yeah, it likes to rev. We're at 5.4 at 115. Yeah, it's got some pull there. It's not gonna pull your arms off, but it's certainly keeping up with the traffic and accelerating. But I can still pour it on, and there's more power there to be had. I can feel it building. I need to understand this power of this bike a little bit better. Alright. Oh, it's got a bit of life to it.
Mid-range pull in these lower gears is fun. Over 5,000 revs and the bike is eager to get going. Maximum torque is about to be reached and maximum power is only 2,000 revs away. Now this bike is no slouch, being capable of 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in under 6 seconds. But you don't need to be a rocket scientist to recognise that blacktop twisties are this bike's favourite environment. But it's time to see what this engine has to offer in the dirt. Getting to my testing site is going to be a little wet and muddy, but it's a great opportunity to get to know the engine and drivetrain. At the end of the day, riding slow through obstacles reveals a lot about the engine's suitability for dirt. I'm wary, as I know those innocent looking puddles can sometimes be bottomless and full of goop, and there's a real chance of getting stuck. The secret is momentum and using the low down grunt of the engine to subtly move forward. The clutch is light and its take-up point is smooth and allows me to feed the power accurately. The engine's pulling response from low revs is reassuring, but I haven't put too much demand on it yet. Would more aggressive tyres help? Absolutely. They'd bite into this mud a lot better. But the bike's low seat height is working in my favour, keeping things stable when traction is sketchy and helping me paddle through the worst of it when I need to.
Oh, how am I going to get rid of that? I hate that. This could end up me going in the drink if I'm not careful.
Alright, time to hook into it. The engine feels a little down on power compared to what I'd ideally want. It's not sluggish, it still punches along just fine, but I do find myself wishing for a bit more muscle, especially in the low and mid-range. As I push it harder, the limits of the suspension and frame geometry start to show themselves. It's a reminder that while the engine's trying, the chassis isn't exactly begging to be flogged. Still, when the dirt smooths out a bit, this is where it all starts to come together. The power delivery, even if modest, is predictable, and that predictability makes it a hell of a lot of fun. I carve out a spot to throw in some skids and slides, and instantly it clicks. This surface, this pace, it's this bike's happy place in the dirt. And if I'm honest, it's mine too. Suspension on the twisties, genuinely impressive. The Bear 650 feels planted and playful, and great fun in the corners. But even with the rear twin shocks set to their softest preload, they're a bit firm for my 94 kilo frame. Not uncomfortable, but noticeable. The real surprise is up front. The 43mm Showa forks with 130mm of travel handle rough tarmac beautifully. Push it harder and the difference between the front and rear becomes clear. On dirt, that gap widens. The forks stay composed, but the rear shocks, limited to 115mm of travel, start to feel harsh. To be fair, I'm pushing the Bear beyond its design brief. It's not a hardcore adventure bike, but it's good to know where the limits are.
God, that back end just kicked me in the arse. I mean, I didn't see single trail as something to be done on this bike, but hey, it's doing all right. And again, because it's low, you got that low seat height, reasonably good ground clearance. Oh shit! That was interesting. Well, let's put this ABS off before we continue, eh? Oh, now this is one of the things that's going to get it, is ruts. I think we might have to go down the side there.
Ground clearance is a respectable 184mm. Well, respectable for a Scrambler. And if you take your time, most obstacles can be ridden over without hooking up. Off-road handling, it's a mixed story. On firm gravel, the Bear 650 feels sharp and responsive, but hit deep sand or slippery mud and the front end gets nervous fast.
Oh dear. Whoa! Now I'm stuck. Now this is where that little handle comes in handy. I don't mind that. That ought to get me out. Very handy. There we are.
Blame the 19-inch front wheel, the fat tyre profile and road bias dual sport rubber. Yes, the geometry's been tweaked. Longer wheelbase, slacker rake, but it's still a road bike at heart. Anything rougher than gravel becomes a challenge. It'll do it, but it's not in its element.
So I'm trying to line these up just so you can see the difference in the steering geometry and wheel size and everything else. So let's see if I can achieve that. Well, the Bear isn't a Hemi, but I just thought I'd show you a bit of the comparison there and why this bike's off-road credentials are so much better. I mean, there's a million things different, but you know, I'm just talking about that front end handling, and you can see if you look at those two bikes side by side, you can see that the fork angle on this is much more pushed out away from the bike. So that slows down steering and makes it better in handling in the dirt. And the most obvious thing is the 21-inch tyre as opposed to the 19 on the other. And the thing with the 21-inch, it gives more surface area on the dirt. And not only that, it's narrower. So those knobs dig into the dirt and give you the good grip. On the Bear, it's as slippery as soon as you get into mud or sand, that front end goes really slippery. Now you could improve that dramatically putting off-road tyres on the Bear. Now the great thing the Bear's got going for it is low seat height. And this is why, you know, I can see it being an introduction to adventure, you know, for a couple of day trip on that flat kind of gravel. And there you have it. Feet firmly planted on the ground. There's nothing like that, and it's a primary consideration for so many motorcyclists when they buy a bike. They want that reassurance that they can put their feet on the ground. The actual stance while riding is comfortable. These handlebars are a little bit forward, but I actually enjoyed that in the freeway speeds. It worked well. Yeah, there was a bit of pressure coming because it's a naked bike. That's what you're buying. But yeah, it was good.
The standing position on the Bear was better than expected. Comfortable and stable at both slow technical speeds and when pushing on in the dirt. It gave me the control I needed to help the suspension soak up the bigger hits. Out on the dirt, the 270mm rear disc is, well, okay. It works, but there's not a heap of feel through the pedal. It took a bit of practice to back it in smoothly, but I won't lie, it was good fun trying. There's just not a lot of feedback to play with. That said, the brake pedal itself is a win, big, solid and well positioned for off-road boots. Up front, the 320mm disc brake didn't exactly blow me away. It's not the sharpest or most progressive unit I've used, and there were times I had to really give the lever a good squeeze to get the bike to pull up. The foot pegs though are proper off-road style, chunky and grippy, no complaints there. Switch gear for the main is clean and functional, but I'm not sold on the toggle switch used to scroll through dash info. It's clunky and feels a bit out of place on a modern bike. On the plus side, the ABS deactivation is dead simple, just a single button press on the right-hand switch block.
So if this was my bike and I was turning to a little bit more dirt orientation, the best thing you can do to improve this bike's off-road performance is tyres. A more aggressive set of dirt-oriented tyres would make the world of difference on this bike. The next thing is bark busters. And finally, it's a bash plate, and there's a lot going on under there. And this is the thing that I worry about, and why I'd have a bash plate on this if I was doing a lot of dirt. I've seen these oil filters with holes in them and being punctured by gum sticks that are very strong. They just flick up awkwardly, and I've seen them punch right through that. It's hard to believe, but that actually does happen. There's a couple of other things that are a bit vulnerable around here, a couple of pipes, and I just feel happier with a bash plate on that.
And just like that, a bash plate arrived. For those new to Royal Enfield, scan the QR code on the box to get the fitting instructions. And Royal Enfield, if you're listening, can you stamp that QR code on a couple of locations on the box, please? Because I nearly lost the code when I was pulling the tape off the box. The bash plate is thin aluminium and not designed for hard off-road, and I don't mind. What it will do is protect the oil filter and oil cooler pipes that were vulnerable.
I thought I'd bring out the Tenere and set it up against the Bear, and I couldn't help myself, I brought out the Hemi as well. But have a look at the size of this. You know, to me the Tenere is a bike for intermediate skilled riders. You know, it's big, it's tall, and it's quite funny. They're, you know, there's probably a couple of kilograms between them in terms of weight, but you can see I'm on my tiptoes. You know, this has got long travel suspensions, beautiful handling, reliable as. But, you know, this is for intermediate riders, and what I'm trying to do is provide options for beginners and those just wanting to have a taste. And this is the thing, you can see that I'm on tiptoes. And seat height, don't underestimate seat height when you're trying to get into off-road motorcycling. So then have a look at the Bear. Honestly, look at the difference. You know, it looks tiny. You know, it's like a dwarf. Now the other thing that becomes obvious here is the centre of gravity, and let's just put my finger roughly, you know, where the crank is, and it's about there on the Yami, and it's way down here on the Hemi. And so the weight, although they're comparative in terms of weight, the weight on the Hemi is way down low, and then the added benefit you've got is that low seat height that allows you to put your feet firmly on the ground. So yeah, for road riders, I can't help but think if you wanted to experiment and just have a taste of the dirt, this bike has a bit to offer. The sorts of roads I'm thinking about are just, you know, flat, relatively flat tracks, and Australia's got stacks of those to investigate. Adventure camper, that's how I categorise this bike. It's fun on the road, fun on the twisties, and you know what? It's really fun on flat dirt. It's a cracker. But if you want to commit the full hog and you don't want to spend too much money, you want something highly capable, then you can't go past the Hemi. It's a great little bike. It does everything. I've ridden them all over the world, and they're just reliable, bulletproof. And once you've got that heavy-duty bash plate on them, you can just take them anywhere.
So, what's the verdict for the Royal Enfield Bear 650? It's a scrambler in style, with just enough bite to back it up. It's not pretending to be a hardcore adventure machine, but it does open the door to dirt for riders who usually stick to the blacktop. Fun in the twisties, planted on the road, and surprisingly capable off it, with a few rough edges that add to the charm rather than take away. The Bear 650 isn't here to dominate trails, it's here to tempt you into trying them.